Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Enterprise Ireland webinar on the topic of creating your customer value proposition. I see people are just connecting now, so we'll give another few seconds so everybody is in. And we'll just give it another 10 seconds and we'll kick off. Okay, so welcome everybody. As I said, the topic of this webinar is creating your customer value proposition. Great to have so many people joining us here for this lunchtime webinar today. Firstly, thank you to Enterprise Ireland and in particular Roisin Carroll for coordinating having myself and Shane Cornally here today. We look forward to sharing some practical insights and knowledge with you. But a little housekeeping before we start. We will keep to the 55-minute time frame. You will notice that your mics are muted. However, we would love your feedback and your questions during the session. So it would be great if, as those questions come to you, you could post them in the chat as I'm delivering the theoretical part of the session, but also as we launch into the Innovate Labs story towards the end. You're also very, very welcome to take your own notes, but please note the webinar is being recorded and you will receive a synopsis of the deck after the event is finished. So to introduce myself, my name is Leonie Tansey. I am the Director of Client Services with IMS Marketing. We are a B2B marketing agency based in Oranmore, County Galway, with 25 employees based around the country. I've spent the past 20 years working in marketing across various industries. The last 10 years I've been here with IMS, looking after our clients who are predominantly in the medical or manufacturing, engineering, construction, software and technology fields. So a significant part of my role involves working with Enterprise Ireland clients in the development and execution of their international brand and marketing strategies. I also work as a business advisor on Enterprise Ireland's Enter the Eurozone programme, as well as being a provider on the EI Digital Marketing Capability Grant Programme, which is where I first had the pleasure of meeting my fellow panellist today, Shane Cornally. And as Innovate Labs have recently been on their own value proposition journey through the Digital Marketing Capability Grant Programme, I've asked Shane to join me here today to share his thoughts, I guess, on the experience. So Shane, I'll let you introduce yourself, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you, Leonie. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shane Cornally. I'm the Sales Director with Innovate Labs. Innovate Labs, we're a contract manufacturer of cosmetics, oral care products and medical devices, and we're based in Clara in County Offaly. The company was founded in 2007, and in 2023 we worked with Enterprise Ireland and with IMS, headed up by Leonie, in relation to working on a rebrand, and part of that rebrand involved looking at our value proposition. So looking forward to sitting on the webinar today and engaging.
Thanks so much, Shane. So we'll hear loads more from Shane, folks, towards the end of the webinar. Shane, feel free to go on mute for now, if that's okay, and I'll call on you again. So to look at, I guess, the structure for today's session, folks, we're covering the following areas. Very important, I guess, to set the scene and define exactly what a value proposition is to start off with. And then I'll discuss the importance of starting with the audience. We'll look at the 7 key mistakes, I guess, to avoid when it comes to crafting your own value proposition. I have examples of the good and the bad out there. And then I'll take you through something called the Value Proposition Canvas, which is a tool that we use here in IMS to help our clients articulate the value prop or their value propositions. My hope is by the end of this session, you'll be able to go away and take that tool and use it with your own teams to create your own value propositions. I'll wrap up then with a recap on the characteristics of a strong value proposition before we bring Shane back in for a chat about the Innovate Labs journey. As I said, they've recently been through it, so you'll hear a lot of the theory from me, but hopefully that will come to life more when you hear from Shane. So I guess when it comes to value propositions, to really set the scene, it's important to say that unlike many elements of contemporary marketing, you don't need to have a massive budget to create a really compelling value proposition. At the end of the day, A value proposition is just a series of words on a page or on a website or in a brochure, and words are free. And I think that's why I really love working with clients and creating value propositions. You know, it levels the playing field between big and small players and allows those organizations who are really customer centric or audience centric cut through the noise by delivering the right message to the right person. Also, I guess because most organizations and unfortunately B2B organizations in particular often fail to hit the mark in creating impactful value propositions, those companies that invest the time in doing it right can quickly deliver results. But let's take a step back and look at what exactly a value proposition is. So a value proposition is a statement about the outcomes a specific audience can derive through engaging with your product, your service, your brand, or your organization. So if you're going to write down one word from this webinar today, the word should be outcomes. If you develop a value proposition with the outcomes your audience cares most about, you can't go wrong. The clearer you can qualify and quantify these outcomes, the better chance your value proposition has of resonating. So we'll revisit that concept a little bit later, but that's the definition, folks. So keep that word outcomes in your mind and you cannot go wrong. So as businesses, we need strong value propositions for lots of reasons, but mainly it's to spur our target audience out of their complacency with the status quo, pique their interest about what is actually possible, and encourage them to take an action. So an action could be lots of different things. It might be getting a prospect to fill in or request a callback form, or inspire a potential candidate to apply for a job, or maybe inspire an existing customer to upgrade to the next level of service offering. But really it's about kind of getting them out of that kind of position where they're in. Maybe they're happy with the current supplier, they're happy with the current job, you know, they're floating along in their day-to-day, and they see something from you that spurs them out of that complacency and makes them take an action. So why do we need different value propositions for different audiences? Well, I guess that's because different audiences have different sets of pain points, motivations, and jobs they're trying to get done. So even when selling into one company, it's quite likely that every member of the buying committee will be motivated by a different set of outcomes when it comes to making a decision on the purchase of a new product or solution. Therefore, the message that resonates with one, unfortunately, may not resonate with the other. So procurement officers may be interested in getting the best value for money when engaging with a new cybersecurity partner, whereas a CIO would be more motivated by compliance and security credentials and the assurances he or she can get around that. In an export context, we are often asked by our clients if we need to adjust the value proposition for different geographic markets, and the answer is generally yes. So, for example, the Irish market for commercial rainwater harvesting technology is likely motivated by a completely different set of factors than potential targets in the Middle East who are dealing with, say, different climate, different construction types, different sets of building regulations, environmental regulations. So if you go to the Middle East with your Irish value proposition, it's very, very likely that it's going to fall short in that context. So I guess when we think about the mistakes that that these companies make, it's really, really important that we kind of learn from the good and the bad. So I guess looking at mistakes, and I will reiterate that a lot, one of the key mistakes is kind of not identifying all the different audiences that require a VP. So when we think about who they are, that really depends on your commercial goals. So if you want to attract new business, you need to have a value proposition for the specific audience segments you are targeting. So for example, in IMS, we'll have a different value proposition when we're speaking to an engineering company versus a medical device company. If you're trying to generate more business from existing clients or customers, you likely want to develop a VP for this audience. As the task of retaining and attracting talent in this really tight labour market becomes increasingly challenging, it's a really good idea to have an employee value proposition, especially for those key hard to fill roles. So you're trying to set yourself apart with your value proposition from others who are on the hunt for similar talent. If your business needs to raise equity, it's important you have an investor or a lender VP. So far, so good. We just need to identify our audience and create a statement about the outcomes they can enjoy through interfacing with us, our products or services. Simple, and yet, as I said, so many organizations get this wrong. So let's look at, I guess, the mistakes that we see. And Most of these mistakes are B2B related. There's a couple of B2C examples as well. But you'll find, as I said at the start, a lot of complex solutions find it hard to really articulate their value proposition well. In our experience, there may not be a marketing person in-house, so an engineer has come up with the value proposition, or it's completely absent from the marketing material, one or the other. So it's either overly complex or it's not there at all. So let's look at the common mistakes. So the number one mistake that we see when it comes to value propositions is the fact that they're purely written from the organization's perspective. So we are Europe's largest provider of cloud computing services. We are ISO 15001 certified. We have an intelligent, scalable solution. We have the largest market share. We've invested in cutting edge technology. We have a 1,000 square foot facility beside the motorway. And while you need to be able to point to your solution's functional features and benefits, this is not actually your value proposition. This is maybe the solutions page on your website, the downloadable data sheet, but not the core message you want to communicate to kind of hook your audience into taking that all important action. Remember, your value proposition is not about you. It's about your audience and what they care about. So all potential audiences, even B2B buyers, consider that what's in it for me when researching possible options. If your VP is focused on you and your solution instead of your audience and their concerns, it will not generate the desired action. So let's look at a little example of that. So this is a company called Cypher Learning, who have made the mistake of making their VP very much about them, the world's best learning platform for entrepreneurs. So in general, I guess my advice would be adjectives like best, world-class, high quality don't really mean a whole lot. They're often just filler copy. But if you're going to claim to be the best, you ideally need to provide some unbiased evidence to back up that claim, and we'll talk about that later in the piece as well. So let's move on to mistake number 2. Is confusing your value proposition with your USP, your slogan, or your mission statement. And it is quite confusing, to be honest. I'm not surprised that this is a mistake lots and lots of companies make. So it's important to revisit our original definition, I guess here. Value proposition is a statement about the outcomes the audience can derive through engaging with your product, your service, your brand, or your organization. Your unique selling proposition, or your USP, is more specific. It tells how your product is better than competitors. So a USP focuses on what makes a product or service unique. A value proposition focuses on the overall value that it provides to that audience. So we're all likely familiar with Apple's USP: sleek design, intuitive user interface, and seamless hardware and software integration. On the other hand, a slogan is a catchphrase. It's concise, it's a memorable phrase people associate with your brand. So I think one of the most famous ones I could put up in this slide is Nike's Just Do It. And then finally, a mission statement. And that's really more of a deep dive into your company's purpose and values. It answers really why the company exists in the first place. So remember, a value proposition is different from each of these. At its most basic, if you think of it this way, a value proposition is the message that convinces customers to click buy now or sign up now instead of leaving your website and going elsewhere. Mistake number 3, again, reiterates the need for audience focus. You've spent time researching and crafting a brilliant value proposition based on the value you create for one audience, and then you roll that out to all your audiences. So some of the statement may resonate, but it's likely to fall short. Remember, if you're communicating to everyone, you're communicating to no one. So it takes time to create specific customer VPs for different audiences, but if you aren't doing it, you can be sure your competitor is. Even if their solution isn't on par with yours, their targeted message may end up landing them the deal. So here's an example, Monday.com, the project management software. I think anybody who lived through the pandemic remembers seeing ads for Monday.com left, right, and center. But it's a very, very good example of a brand which effectively communicates a unique message to many different audience types on their website. You can see here the different VPs depending on whether you're in the marketing team or the product development team or the ops team. So they do a super job. When you get to the website, you kind of self-identify, I'm in marketing, I'm in product development, and you see the VP that's going to resonate with you. Mistake number 4, is something we like to call the kitchen sink. And this comes up a lot, especially for complex solutions, because I guess your solution creates value in lots of different ways for your customer, but maybe because you don't know your customer well enough, or you aren't sure which elements they actually care about, or you can't prioritize them, you kind of throw everything in just to be sure. And I can see why companies make this mistake, but your customer or your reader or your audience shouldn't really have to wade through kind of all those elements of your value proposition just to get to the good stuff. And in fact, they won't probably bother. Your value proposition should only include what it is that they care about. Everything else is noise. And as we know, we live in a very, very noisy environment where we're bombarded by lots of different messages and lots of different forms of advertising. So it's very, very important that you don't overload your value proposition and just include the 2 or 3 key points that actually the audience cares about. Zendesk is a customer support SaaS company based in San Francisco. Again, a really well-known company. And this example shows the kitchen sink approach. It's just too long a sentence where we're told about improving customer service, meeting customer needs, setting up teams, keeping businesses in sync. It's quite generic, and it's a lot of information to take in one hit. So I think this is definitely a good example of what not to do. Mistake number 5 is failing to communicate how you create value your audience cares about in a way that's different from your competitor. So this diagram is a super one, and I would absolutely fill it out for you and your competitors, because if you can understand your points of difference versus the competitor, you're really at a good starting point to create a value proposition. So the intersection between your prospect's desires and your value proposition points is your point of difference. And that's the area that you want to be highlighting. So a good example of this is Delta. And this is what we refer to as an onlyness type value proposition statement. It's very much focused on the points of difference. And this shows us a few years, it's actually a few years old at this stage, but it's a really, really good example. Delta launched free in-flight entertainment. And they clearly understood that flyers value free in-flight entertainment, and they knew that their competitors weren't offering it at the time. And a value proposition like this, really short, really sharp, really honestly comparing yourself to the competitors in a positive light, is very, very hard for anyone else to compare with. So it's a really, really positive example of how to create an only statement type value proposition. You don't want to waste your time or your marketing budget talking about your points of parity. So the areas where you and your competitor are essentially the same, or worse still, talking about points of irrelevance, highlighting elements of your offering that your prospect actually doesn't care about. We often see clients focusing the value prop around points of parity or points of relevance when they haven't invested, I guess, enough time into prospect and competitor research. So A, they don't actually understand what it is that their audience value about their offering, and B, they don't have a clear picture of how they stack up versus the competitor's offering. And it's really nearly impossible to craft a compelling VP without looking outward to your clients and your competitor set. And remember, alongside going out and talking to people, the EI Market Research Centre is there, and it's a super source of secondary research reports to help you inform your competitor research and your client research, depending on kind of what level clients that you have. So mistake number 6, most of you will remember this ad, 9 out of 10 cats prefer whiskers. It's an old one at this stage, but if you are lucky, I guess the point that I'm trying to get across here is if you're lucky enough to have data to substantiate that your offering is superior to the competitor in an area that your audience cares about, because your audience doesn't care, you're not hitting the right point anyway. But if it's in an area that your audience cares about, then you should be including this in your value proposition messaging. Remember, being better, faster, bigger in the absence of qualifying data is not necessarily a strong value proposition. If you're better, faster, bigger, then you need to back this up with tangible stats. Otherwise, we're just playing with fluffy adjectives, and we're in danger of really kind of coming across as quite untrustworthy. So if your offering can help a prospect make tangible improvements to some metric that they care about, it's hugely beneficial to be able to add numbers to substantiate that claim. A really clever example of this here, without using hugely precise figures, is Stripe. So I think everybody knows Stripe at this stage. And here we can see them call out the fact that millions of companies of all sizes use Stripe. So getting really hard to argue with that. And if you're in a market for a payment solution, hearing that you are potentially going to work with a solution already used by millions of others would encourage you to go there and hit the start now button, I think is what they have. So again, just that reminder that it's the hook that's going to inspire that action. So final mistake, and I guess because we work a lot on the creative side, lots of companies come to us looking for more creative marketing collateral, be it digital ads, a website, a brochure, an event stand, anything really. And they're usually really intensely focused on what the creative looks like rather than what the message says. And while the visual is absolutely so important, even the most well-designed UX focused web page or the prettiest brochure will fail if the message is not crystal clear and the value proposition isn't well articulated and customer centric. This is a great example coming up by productivity tool Slack, where in 30 seconds, you get the essence of what the value Slack is in comparison to your team using email. So creating, I guess, appealing creative is important, but the message really is the first thing to get right. So remember, message first, creative second. So let's talk about the value proposition canvas. Now that we have clarity, I guess, on what the VP is, how do we actually go about working on creating one? So as I said at the start, we use a tool. It's called the value proposition canvas. It was developed by a gentleman called Alexander Osterwalder, and it's really to help you solidify all the inputs that go into creating a value prop. It helps us capture those key elements that we need to include in the final statement and disregard the non-important items, if you like. So this is what a canvas looks like. Some of you may be familiar with the business model canvas. It plugs into something called the value proposition plugs into the business model canvas. And when we host in-person or virtual interactive workshops with clients, we collaboratively work on completing this canvas. So you can absolutely do this around your own boardroom table. You could do it over Teams or Zoom through using something like Miro. I'm going to walk you through how you and your team could complete this yourselves. You don't need to necessarily work with a professional to do this. It's quite self-explanatory. You can work through each of the segments. The important thing is, I guess, that you have a good cross-section of people there. So let's just reiterate on those points. You want to be sure you know who you're creating this canvas for. You're not just creating it for Acme Engineering as a whole. You're creating it for your service offering and a specific customer group. You want to make sure that there are people involved in collaborating on the canvas who know the customer really well. So the customer success team, salesperson, customer service. Everybody needs to participate and add their contributions. But I find a lot in these sessions that there's lots of superfluous and kind of noisy points brought up. So it's really important to have something that we call a park it board, where you can just park those points that are important but don't require resolution today and aren't important for the forming of the value proposition. And then depending on whether you're virtual, as I said, or in person, think about things like Miro or an old-fashioned whiteboard, markers, post-its, blue tack, and just lots and lots of patience. It probably takes a good hour and a half to properly work your way through one value proposition canvas for one audience. So it's not something that you can kind of do very, very quickly. My preference, if possible, is to gather people in a room. I just think it inspires kind of more conversation, more thought. I know that's not always possible. So look, sometimes virtual is all we have. But if possible, it's great to gather people together and nearly make a day of it and try and figure out how maybe to create 2 or 3 value proposition workshops in one go. So we start with the customer side of the canvas. And firmly place yourselves in the customer's shoes. So when I go into a business to run a value proposition workshop, when we're at this stage in the canvas, I say to the participants, okay, forget who you work for. You are now the customer. You are now the person working in the customer's business. Give yourself a title and think about the customer side of the value proposition canvas from their perspective. Forget who it is you work for. So here we need to write on top of the canvas or type on top of the canvas. Let's just say we're a company selling payroll software to medium-sized companies. This VP canvas today that we're creating is for the head of payroll and accounts in a medium-sized manufacturing company based in Tipperary. You may have a very, very specific client in mind. You may be able to name him or her, and that's fine too. You can do that as well. So the first thing we look at in the VP canvas is the jobs the audience or the customer in question is trying to get done. So you may be familiar with jobs to be done theory, which basically espouses that people don't just buy products and services, they hire them to do a very specific job. And this is echoed in Levitt's quote, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. So you're thinking very carefully about the jobs your client is trying to get done. And there are so many different types of jobs your audience is trying to get done. And what you need to do when filling in this section of the value proposition canvas is list them and then reprioritize them, because not all jobs are equal. So when thinking about the jobs, ask yourself, what functional jobs is the customer trying to get done? So are they trying to perform a specific task or solve a very specific problem? What social jobs are they trying to get done? So are they trying to look good? Are they trying to gain power or status? And what emotional jobs are they trying to get done? Are they trying to feel more secure in their work? Are they trying to impress somebody? And then maybe there's some basic needs your customer is trying to satisfy depending on what business you're in. So it could be communication or shelter. But remember, even in a business-to-business context, you're dealing with people, and people are making decisions for more than just functional reasons. So don't ignore the emotional and social jobs. So pains, I guess, is a bit more straightforward and evolves around the fact that we're all buying products or services to solve some type of problem. So again, you need to list your audience's pains and then reprioritize them. So questions to ask you and your team to help build this list are, what does your audience find too costly? What takes up a huge amount of time? What takes up a lot of effort? What maybe makes them feel bad or frustrated or annoyed in their day-to-day? What are their main challenges or difficulties that they're encountering? What risks do they fear? What common mistakes do they make? And what barriers are keeping your customers from adopting that solution? Now is probably a good time to stop and say that your solution won't solve all problems. But in understanding the problems and the pains and the gains your customer cares about, you'll be better positioned to highlight those that matter to them, that you can help with. So you can't fix everything. So that's why it's important when you pop your pains and your jobs and your gains up there, you reprioritize them and you highlight the ones that you can help with. So let's talk about gains that your audience is trying to achieve, and again, list and prioritize them. The questions that you need to ask here are, what savings would make your customer happy? What would make their life or their job easier? What outcomes do they expect, and what would go beyond their expectations? What do they dream about, and how do they measure success or failure? So once we've filled out the customer side of the canvas, we turn back to ourselves so we can kind of go back to who we are and who we're working for, and think of our own product or solution. So what products or services do you offer, looking over the customer side, that help a customer do a functional job, or an emotional job, or that help them satisfy a basic need? So that they can be tangible, they can be intangible, they could be digital. So you're looking across all the time and you're matching up to see what it is that you offer that could help with those jobs. Same thing on the pain reliever side, what in your offering saves the customer time, fixes an underperforming solution, reduces workload, makes them feel better, eliminates risks and fears. So again, looking across at the pains that you already listed and kind of saying, yeah, we can help with that, we can help with that, we can't help with that, we can help with that, and prioritizing. And then finally, gain creators, thinking about how your offering creates the savings that make your customer happy, produces outcomes they expect and exceed their expectations, maybe outperforms the competitor, makes their life easier, makes them look good, fulfills a dream or a desire that they have, makes a positive outcome which matches their success or failure criteria. So, you have to be thinking in that customer mindset around how do they value success and how do we help them achieve that success. So once we have, I guess, filled out all the boxes on the customer and the product side of the value proposition canvas, we'll be able to tick, I guess, the expected gains to which you've been able to define solutions to go towards those gains. And in the same way, we'll tick the risks and obstacles of pains for which we have an effective solution to resolve them. So the image on the screen shows the results that this gives. So you're matching across, you're drawing arrows and you're highlighting where you can help and where you can't help as well, because it's important to identify that too. So the task now, I guess, is really to take all those inputs from the canvas and create a compelling, easy to read statement, which will encourage the reader of that statement or the audience for that statement to take action. So it's not enough, I guess, you have your value proposition canvas, you have prioritized your pains and your gains and your jobs. Now you need to copyright that into something that's going to resonate with your audience. But thankfully, there's lots of cool templates out there that we can use to help us craft value proposition statements. So I think I have 5 of them to show you today. And the reason we have 5 is, I guess, some solutions are quite simple and they fit into nice neat boxes. Some are a bit more complex. This one is quite simple. We help X do Y by doing Z, where X is your target audience, Y is the goal really, or the problem you want to solve, and Z is the method by which you want to achieve it. So an example here is from a SaaS business. We help non-technical marketers. So, okay, I'm a non-technical marketer. Straight away, I'm opting into this value prop because it's speaking to me. Discover return on investment in social media by turning engagement metrics into revenue metrics. So they're absolutely calling out the problem, I guess, here, that it's very difficult to trace back return on investment in social media. And they're identifying me as a non-technical marketer. This is the solution that could work. So that's one template. Same target group again here, same company. Template 2, the Jeff Moore method. So for a target customer who's a specific need or opportunity, our product or service in X product category can deliver this benefit. So again, for non-technical marketers who struggle to find return on investment in social media, our product is web-based analytics software that translates engagement metrics into actionable revenue metrics. So again, really, really simple and easy one to fill out. What I like to do at the end of kind of completing the value proposition metric is to give these various templates to everybody and let people kind of sit in silence for 10 minutes and pick the one that works best for them and craft a value prop. So you might come up with 5 or 6 different statements by the end of one workshop, which is really, really handy. And then you can pick the one that resonates best. Template 3, again, really nice and simple. What, how, and why. So an example from the fintech industry, Mint is the free, easy way to manage your money online. So short, simple, memorable. What, how, why, 3 keywords or phrases. Keep it simple, no jargon, no fluffy talk. So really, really nice one there. We talked about focusing on points of difference earlier in the webinar, and a big way to bring that back is to, I guess, to revisit Delta. So our solution is the only solution that delivers X. So Delta is the only domestic US airline offering free in-flight entertainment. So really nice and really neat. And finally, template 5 keeps it nice and simple by asking you to simply answer the question, if I am your ideal customer, why should I buy from you instead of any of the other competitors out there? So you need to be answering that question, starting with the word because, bad English perhaps, but it really helps focus the mind and then you can copyright thereafter. So there are 5 really handy templates that I would encourage you to use once you've completed the value proposition canvas. You should never end the workshop really without, creating some form of statement. It can absolutely be polished afterwards, but the canvas on its own isn't the output that you're looking for here. You're looking for that 1 or 2 sentence max value proposition statement that you can start to use in your marketing material straight away. So once you've, I guess, got that lovely statement and you're ready to go, and, often we're all delighted with ourselves because we worked so hard to create the statement, we need to remember that it's very, very important to test it in the real world. So thankfully, there's lots and lots of ways to test, both digital and traditional. What we often do for clients is create a landing page and measure the conversion of visitors on that landing page. You could also A/B test your homepage, maybe with the new or the old value prop, or A/B test a product or a solution page. And I guess it's very data driven in that instance because you can see 50% more people clicked on the new value proposition, hopefully, versus the old one. You could do the same approach with maybe an A/B email. So you could divide your database of similar people in half and send half of them a value prop email with the old and half with the new. If you're to go more traditional, I guess you could hold one-on-one interviews with key clients or key prospects that you trust their feedback. You can mock up the value proposition on a brochure or a homepage, or it doesn't really matter where you put it, and just ask them for their feedback. Focus groups are another great way to test your value proposition. You know, gathering 5 or 10 people in a room, having something mocked up, having something that you can show them, and just asking them about their reaction to your messaging. That's where you get really, really valuable information. I don't recommend just, you know, changing your website overnight or changing all your marketing collateral overnight to the new VP without really, really running a solid test. So before we move over to Shane for chat, I guess, on his experience of building out a new brand, a new name as well, Shane, and VP statement for Innovate Labs, let's quickly recap on the characteristics of a great value prop. So a great value prop is embedded into a great business model. I mentioned the business model canvas earlier. So if you're going to the trouble of doing the VP canvas, I absolutely would suggest that you challenge yourself to complete the business model canvas as well. And the VP canvas will just plug into that, because I guess you want to ensure that you have a great business model to enable the delivery of the value proposition that you are promoting in market. You want it to be focused on what really matters to your customer. I think I've labored that one enough. Ideally, it's focused on solving an unresolved customer problem. So something that's nagging them, annoying them, frustrating them, causing them pain, and they haven't managed to solve it anywhere else. And your value proposition comes up and it calls out that pain and your solution to it very quickly. Ideally, it's targeting a small number of jobs and pains extremely well. Remember, you can't solve everything. That's very, very important. You don't want to be throwing the kitchen sink in there. That it addresses more than just the functional jobs. Remember, even us B2B consumers are consumers at the end of the day. There are emotional drivers behind all of our buying decisions. So we need to make sure we're hitting on those jobs in our value prop. You want it to align with how the customer values or measures success. So if your VP, for example, talks about increasing efficiency by 20%, then this has to be a core KPI for the customer. It ideally will focus on pains and gains that the audience will pay a lot of money for. It should clearly differentiate you from the competitor, and importantly, outperform the competition on at least one important dimension. And finally, in an ideal world, your value proposition should be very difficult for the competitor to kind of swoop in and copy. So those are 10 key, I guess, wrap-up points, guys. Just once you have your value proposition statement completed, if you're trying to tick through those 10 boxes, does it satisfy at least 8 out of 10 of those? And in an ideal world, I suppose you would be scoring 100%. So thank you for listening to the theoretical part of the webinar. It's time now for me to bring in Shane Cornally, Sales Director from Innovate Labs. Shane, you're unmuted yourself and turned on your camera. Thank you. So Shane, just to bring you back, I have included on the slide here, I guess, your former logo and your former value proposition. When I met you and your team in Clara, you were called EPC or Euro Pharma Concepts. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, I can, Leonie. So I guess the company was founded in 2007, okay, and it was originally servicing a medical device oral care market, okay, and over time the company has evolved, whereby we've introduced the manufacturing capabilities of cosmetics, okay, and essentially I guess we would have had 3 strings to our bow in terms of markets that we were servicing, be it oral care, cosmetics, and medical devices, okay, and we would have, I guess, you know, encountered challenges along the way with regard to our identity and how we were perceived in the, let's say, in the market. So examples of that would look like multiple inquiries coming in, you know, to our sales team, whereby we had companies that were looking for us to provide a pharmaceutical development or a pharmaceutical manufacturing service to their companies, and in essence, you know, our basically our branding and our name didn't lend itself to what we were actually doing. Okay, and that presented, as I said, many challenges. So in 2022, I guess we took the decision that we were going to, you know, look at rebranding. And it was at that stage then that I guess we would have initiated contact with yourselves, and we started on that rebranding process.
Super. So I think I hope people are seeing your lovely new branding there. So Shane, you actually not only overhauled your value prop, but also you had the name change from Europharma Concepts or EPC to Innovate Labs.
We did, and again, Europharma Concepts. I guess there was somewhat of a misconception of who we were, but we had created that misconception ourselves insofar as the way we were presenting ourselves through our name. So I think there was a collective agreement inside the company at a senior level that we needed to reposition ourselves in relation to how we were presenting ourselves in the market as a service provider to that market. And it was then at that stage that I guess we sat down and really started to think about who we were, what we represented, and from our customers' perspective, and more so our target customers' perspective. So those companies that we had not engaged with, how were they going to perceive us, when we look to engage with them, to demonstrate our capabilities. And what we were finding was that our conversion rates in terms of converting, new leads and then new opportunities were, they weren't at I guess an acceptable level, which essentially would have correlated with where we needed those conversion rates to be when we looked at our own growth aspirations. So that really forced us to do something about it and really to consider our company as a whole in relation to our name, our brand, and again how we were perceived in the market.
Sure, sure. And Shane, I know we worked through these value propositions, a number of them. And I just have one up on screen there. You bring your vision, we do the rest, which is just an example, I suppose, of a tailored value prop towards beauty brands. So
Yes.
So if I am an influencer and I create my own range of fake tan, I'm very passionate about my vision and my brand. But you stepped in there with we do the rest. Can you just talk us through the thought process around that?
Yeah, I guess if you look at perhaps maybe our target clientele, okay, typically they're either brand owners or they're entrepreneurs looking to start a brand. Typically operating in the, let's say, in the cosmetic space. Okay. The market itself, there's a high level of regulation, okay, and compliance, okay, and technically, I guess to take products from that vision and that concept to to a position whereby those products are saleable. There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot involved, and typically that process can take up to 9 months. Okay, so essentially, I guess what we're saying to our target customers and indeed our existing customers is that whilst you have the idea, you have the concept. Okay, we understand that the mechanics in relation to what's required to bring those products to life, it's quite heavy in terms of I guess technical ability from a research and development perspective, but then there's also I guess quality and regulatory considerations. So really what we're saying is that, in specifically referencing the cosmetic piece of it, is that we're an extension of your I guess your network of partners, whereby if you focus on the sales and the marketing piece, okay, we can take care of pretty much everything back of house, okay, and that includes bringing your vision to life.
Mm-hmm. So really that key message was all about like bringing, the brand along from concept to shelf. Like
Correct.
you kind of took the worry out of the very stages along the way, and they could focus on what they do best while letting you guys focus on what you do best.
Yeah, that's it for sure, and you've got some fabulous entrepreneurs and some fabulous brands that exist, and really their forte is the vision, and then the ability to market and sell their projects, into multiple markets. What we're bringing the solution with regard to what they need, from an execution perspective, to bring that vision from, I guess their mind, or from maybe a concept presentation, okay, all the way to the point at which, they're filling their DCs. So, and again, it's a repeat and play then in relation to, once you're up and running and you've demonstrated that you can provide these services, and you can do it in an efficient and, I suppose, a competitive manner. Then very quickly what we're finding is that as we go back and we repeat the process, it's yielding huge dividends.
So how, I guess, how significant has been the change of value prop messaging? Obviously, a name change is hugely significant, but going out to market now with this message to the beauty brands, in comparison to your old message, which was quite, I guess, inwardly maybe focused. I think you're typical of a lot of people who were, you had great facilities, you had great people, you had a track record, but instead of talking about them, you were talking about yourselves a lot. Has this shortened the sales process? Like, what's the tangible impact been for you, Shane?
Yeah, that's a great question, Leonie, actually, because up until, I guess, probably 2022, okay, we were experts in understanding what was going on inside the four walls of our buildings. Okay, customer centricity wasn't part of what we lived or did on a day-to-day basis, and it really, I guess, took a somewhat of a seismic shift, in terms of our thought process, to understand that, our customers aren't interested in, I guess, our capabilities, our ISO standards, or our compliance with regard to whatever regulations are required in certain markets. Really what they're interested in is, can we give them the solution that they're looking for? So as opposed to focusing on what we believe they want to hear, we stood back and we said, okay, we spoke with, quite a number of our customers, and the feedback that they gave us actually informed, I guess, our ultimately our value proposition, and really, I guess, if I were to tell you what the value proposition is, it's essentially for brands who want to create, unique and disruptive beauty and cosmetic products. Okay, the Innovate Labs business innovation team will collaborate with you from concept to commercialization. Now that piece is very important, okay? Ensuring your vision is flawlessly and successfully executed. Now, one of the operative words there is your, okay? It's not our vision for our customer. It's essentially our customer's vision in relation to what, what they want from us, whereas for a long time, we were telling, I guess to a certain extent, we were telling our customers how good we were, but that didn't always resonate insofar as that's not exactly what they wanted. So in essence, we were perhaps maybe either selling to the wrong target audience, or we didn't understand exactly what our customers required of us. It wasn't until we spoke with our customers and indeed then took that information, and then we sat with you, Leonie, and we started to look at that canvas, that we really understood, what the customer's gains would be, were we able to provide a solution, and then when we looked at the pains, and we then looked at what we could potentially offer our customers, that it all actually started to make sense. But it was quite removed from Europharma concepts and what we believed, we were good at and what we should be selling. And interestingly enough, it actually informed, I guess our value proposition, there's a little bit of chicken and egg here, okay, but our value proposition actually informed our sales strategy. As we went forward, because very quickly we started to understand that, well, our customers' needs are X. If we can fulfill those needs, then very quickly we're going to succeed in the marketplace. And what we did is once we had a clear understanding, I guess we honed in on the value proposition, but that then informed some gaps in our organization, particularly around R&D, and we went out and we filled those gaps as quickly as we could. And signs on, it's had an immense impact on our business. But the catalyst for change there was actually the value proposition. So it provoked an awful lot of thought inside in our business, which ultimately resulted in positive change.
Yeah, it's a really interesting exercise, and I think the reason I asked you, Shane, to come along today was because I do think it's had such a transformative effect, not just from a branding creative point of view, but your whole ethos as a business and your focus. I think Ona Shukr or you must be reading Ona Shukr's question, because he just asked how much did you involve existing customers in the rebranding value prop process, and if so, what was their main feedback and learning? To my memory, I do think we did some in-depth interviews of key existing clients at that time, Shane, and that was really interesting because they also pointed out, look, what you're giving us isn't really reflective in what you're telling the world that you do, right?
Yeah, and that was very enlightening.
Yeah.
And I guess it was a little bit difficult, in all honesty, but we knew that if we were going to get this right, we had to speak and listen to our customers, and not all of the feedback, pointed towards, Euro Pharma Concepts at the time being in a position where we were delighting our customers. We certainly weren't. We were servicing our customers, but we certainly weren't delighting our customers, and we weren't setting them apart, or positioning them where they could set themselves apart from their own competition.
Yeah.
But it was only when, I guess, we spoke with our customers, we took on board the feedback, and we looked at the collective feedback very quickly. We could start to see trends in relation to, what we perceived ourselves to be to our customers, as opposed to, the reality of the situation and what we were to our customers. And, there was quite a difference. And I guess we were brave enough to take action on that, and listen to what our customers said, and then carve out the value proposition. Now, one or two of the things happened retrospectively, where we, there was a little bit of a eureka moment where we figured this out, and we said, I think we have it. And then we said, okay, well, actually, we've now identified a couple of gaps here that we need to fill. But if we, if we invest and we fill those gaps and we bring in the necessary resources, then we can go out and we can live that value proposition. And lo and behold, we've done that, and it's worked.
Shane, I'm just conscious of time, so there's some questions in the chat that I'm just going to put up, some for me and maybe some for you. Let's see. Okay. Anonymous attendee, where should the value prop be found on the website, the homepage? Yes, absolutely, on the homepage. I would like to see your overarching value proposition on the homepage above the fold. So it should be the first thing that's there, hitting your audience across the top of the head, with a call to action button on it. Would you meet customers or survey by email? We have done both. I would prefer to do in-depth interviews if I get the time with the clients. I think you get more out of a 15-minute conversation over Zoom or Teams than you will out of a quantitative survey. I think when people are kind of typing in, it's a different vibe, and you can also, I guess, go down rabbit holes when you're chatting to people. And I think the fact that you can have camera on, have really good conversation is a great idea. Ideally, as well, I do think it should be an independent third party that has those conversations, because I think sometimes your clients actually like you and they're not going to tell you warts and all. Now, some are, Would you agree, Shane?
I would, yeah, I would for sure. Definitely, I think the information, the feedback that we got was, it was frank, it was honest, and I'm not so sure that we would have got that if we had conducted the interviews ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Depends who you're asking. It could also be an Irish thing that we're very, very polite sometimes and we don't want to share. Also, I would also make sure that you let people know that if you are using an anonymous third party, that their answers will remain anonymous. How can you ensure that customer gains are not an opposite statement to the customer pains? Uh, I This is a tough one. I love when a value proposition calls out a very specific customer pain. It doesn't always work that way. I'd nearly need to see the unique situation to help craft it. But the core message is you need to be focusing on either gains or pains that the customer cares about that you can service in a way that's better from the next nearest competitor. So, that onlyness statement bit comes in there a little bit as well. How do you actually communicate your VP to a client? Would it be in your first initial conversation? Should there be a slide in your VP? So it really depends on, I guess, your sales process and the journey that your prospect comes on. I'm not a huge fan of, about us presentations. I feel like it should be about the customer presentation, and one of the first slides on that presentation should be a slide on the VP. I think Big Ping and Shane and Fran and Kira in Innovate Labs spent a lot of time doing this, is to make sure that everybody who's out there customer facing in your organization understands the value proposition and can speak to it. But you're weaving your value proposition in at every single interaction of the sales process. It's really, really important that it goes all the way through. Now, folks, I'm just checking the time, so we're just pretty much there. Shane, thank you so much for taking the time to represent Innovate Labs. It's been a pleasure to work on this project with you. That is the end of today's webinar, folks. I'd like to thank Enterprise Ireland and Roisin and her team for coordinating and inviting us to deliver on this really interesting topic. It's one that's very close to my heart. I could talk about value propositions all day. Please do visit enterprise-ireland.com for information on Enterprise Ireland sales and marketing supports. There's a couple of really interesting webinars coming up delivered by my colleagues on sales pipeline optimization and accounts-based marketing. So again, they're 55-minute, nice, short, sharp webinars. And hopefully delivering lots and lots of value. I'm sorry I haven't got to every single question, but I will try and respond to them separately outside of the webinar. But thank you, folks, for your time and attention. I hope it added value. If I can answer any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, leonie@imsmarketing.ie. Thank you so much.